Central. Here's Ryan Yousefi and Thomas Galicia.
I wonder how clear it must look from there to here. No obstruction, the selfish corruption, all in this atmosphere. No fear, less tears, only time.
Welcome everybody to Dolphins Central Radio. I'm Thomas Galicia. With me as always my co-host Ryan Yousefi. And Ryan, we have an awesome show today, don't we?
We do. I just finished my, like a lot of people, my fantasy draft myself here last night, and we have a fantasy-heavy show today, and with a one of our best guests, if you ask me, at the end there. You want to go ahead and tell everybody who's on the show today?
All right. Well, today on the show we're gonna have Alex Miglio of Pro Football Focus. He also writes for Bleacher Report, and he also contributes to The Huddle and even Monday Morning Quarterback.
Hey guys.
And there he is.
Yep. There he is. How you doing today, Alex?
I wasn't sure if you guys were going through the whole thing or not, so sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, you have so many accolades and things you contribute to on there, on your profile on Twitter and everything. I was going through them all today. I was like, man, this guy's busy. And,
there's a lot of work.
Yeah, I was talking to you the other day. I thought that's real cool that you're actually contributor to the Monday Morning Quarterback. I saw you link to it. I'm like, do you really just like the site a lot, or it was like really cool to hear that you're part of that? So very cool, man. So we are kicking off the fantasy season, and I did my draft last night. I think a lot of people did their drafts last weekend. And then this weekend, a lot of people are going to finish up. I was looking at one of your crazy leagues you're in where you have like every defensive player possible and everything. What I was reading your preseason hype for the Bleacher Report, like we said, you're right. The preseason hype bust edition. A couple guys you had said that possibly are overhyped right now. Pryor for the Raiders, a quarterback. Whedon, Stills, which is a guy from New Orleans. I had my eye on. I actually have a waiver claim in for him right now. Hopefully it goes through before anybody hears this. As far as the Dolphins, keeping to that motto there, what would be the preseason hype bust for the Dolphins in your eyes?
That's a good question for the Dolphins. I think that some people have Daniel Thomas higher than they should, which is undraftable. A lot of people, there's all this talk about, how he's going to split carries with Lamar Miller and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, come on, he's averaging, 3.5 yards per carry for his career. He doesn't look any better than he has ever in the past. So I don't understand why they're still messing with him. As a Lamar Miller handcuff, maybe if you're in a deep league, but I wouldn't draft him.
Yeah, to be fair to him, he did get three yards on 7 carries. So if you're in a fraction point league, he did score. So I guess it's better than 0. So you should put him in there.
If you're in a golf league, yeah. If you're in a golf league.
Exactly. He actually had a butt tackle there. A lot of people noticed where he was tackled by the butt of his own offensive lineman. So, and then Philbin came out today, said he played well, which, they got to say stuff like that. But, yep, as far as we're going to stick to the Dolphins side of this fantasy talk, since I know you're a Dolphins fan, and I love following you. Since, last season about this time, I found you on Twitter and was really, I think I had asked you a fantasy question. I've really been impressed by how you cover fantasy. Tannehill, he's available in my league. I have RG3, someone like that. If you have a quarterback where, maybe a Michael Vick that might get benched, is Tannehill someone that is rosterable right now in a one quarterback league, or is he someone that's going to be behind other guys that are available, maybe a Carson Palmer or something, that's, kind of one of the undrafted guys or late drafted guys?
I think that Tannehill I have him ranked 18th at quarterback, I think, right now. And he's one of those guys for me that, I think he is rosterable depending on what you need. If you feel like you need a backup quarterback or you have a deep bench or something like that, he's pretty good. I mean, he's in the second year. He's got a better weapon this year. Even if Dustin Keller's gone now, I think he looks really good to me. The last game, he's throwing a lot of pinpoint passes, in traffic, and I'm really thrilled to see what he's going to do to the regular season. So, yeah, I mean, if you want a second quarterback, he's a guy with upside. I probably wouldn't take him over a guy like Carson Palmer, who I think is going to have a pretty good year in Arizona. You mentioned him, and there's a few others around there, like Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning. Those guys are kind of in the backup range that I would probably take before Tannehill. But if he's available and you want a second quarterback, I would say go for it.
Right. You led me right into my next question. Keller, that really is going to affect his fantasy value, isn't it? Tannehill, that is.
What? Sorry?
Dustin Keller being out, that's really going to probably affect Tannehill's value in a league, possibly because, as you saw the last game, the red zone, they just have – right now they haven't figured out who to go to. So, I mean, if they're going to start a guy like Clay, he's not proven at all. You saw what he can do. You think Keller going out, that maybe that drops Tannehill in your standings a couple slots possibly from like you said, an 18 to maybe a 20, 22 or something like that?
No, you know what? I didn't drop him after that. I know it's going to affect him a little bit, but I think that this was Clay's first start. He needs to build more of a rapport, so hopefully that happens. Although I will say, I don't have I think Clay's kind of got a low ceiling. But we saw what they might be doing. They used a lot of three receiver sets, and Brandon Gibson was featured heavily. I think he got 8 targets last game. And, Tannehill should have had 3 touchdown passes. I mean, the first one was a tough catch for Hartline that, he could have caught. He put it up there. He didn't go up and get it. And then Brandon Gibson dropped one in the end zone before he finally caught one. So I think that we're going to see more 3 receiver sets than we might have before Keller went down. And I don't think it really drops Tannehill's value too much.
All right. Alex, that actually was leading me to the question I was going to ask anyways, and that would be, which player do you see being the Tannehill's main target in the red zone without Keller this year?
Oh, that's a good question. In the red zone, I mean, how long has it been since the Dolphins have had a real red zone threat? So, yeah, I mean, I honestly think it could be Gibson. I mean, Gibson was a red zone threat for the Rams last year too. He's a big receiver. We see that he's inconsistent with his hands. So unless Clay steps up, or maybe, who knows, maybe Michael Agnew finally lives up to the third round status this year and moves up and starts becoming a red zone threat, I would say probably Gibson.
All right, next, now that we know that Lamar Miller is a starting running back, even though it was on the fence for so long, but now that
we knew that. We've known that. I mean,
yeah, it's now official. It's now official. I don't know why the Dolphins did what they did, but now that we know it's official, how much can we really count on him this season as a fantasy threat?
Well, look, so I've had him as somewhere around my 18th best running back all summer. He's been in my top 20 all summer, and I had him there expecting that the Dolphins were going to take some snaps away from him with either Daniel Thomas or Mike Gillislee if Gillislee was a little bit better. So I think he's right around where I expected. I had him at around 220 carries. I think something like 15, 16 touches per game. And, he's a home run hitter. He's got a lot of upside. I mean, we've seen how he can rip off 20-yard runs all the time. And, anytime he touches the ball, he's a threat to go all the way. So I think that he's a good, really good second running back or third running back if you can get him there, in the third or fourth round, and you can draft him with confidence.
Different from what I had been hearing the entire past week. We even said on this show, by the way, actually it was Ryan that said it, that he was. Well, Ryan, what exactly did you say about Lamar Miller?
What did I say about Lamar Miller as far as fantasy-wise?
Fantasy-wise.
Yeah, I was going to stay away from him. He's not somebody that, if you're looking, it depends, of course, what round you get him in. I was in mine last night with a bunch of Dolphins fans, and he dropped to the 6th round in a 12-team league, PPR.
Wow, that's weird.
Yeah, and I was just about to grab him. You know how it is. You get in leagues with some people that aren't exactly fantasy experts, if you will. But yeah, I find myself wanting to gamble on somebody that I know a little bit more about, and as a Dolphins fan, I'm a little biased, and I can be negative at times. So as far as fantasy goes, I just can't. The headache. Let somebody else, guys like Matthew Berry on ESPN, guys that know a lot more than me are big on him, and that's cool. I think that he definitely has the potential in real life. When it comes to fantasy, when they start saying things like, we're going to take him off the field on third down, we're going to take him off the field at the goal line, this and that, I don't know what to believe, and I just don't want the headache, to tell you the truth. So personally, I know we're talking to Chris Cochran as well from PFC Fantasy. We both were like, let's just save that headache for someone else. I'm not going to pay the price for him and let someone else go after him. But it's good to hear positive things this week. It's funny how much a preseason fantasy game will change things.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, here's the thing about the Lamar Miller talking about him, then taking him out at the goal line. We haven't seen that in the preseason. We've seen the Dolphins use him inside the 5 almost exclusively when the starters are in. And, we haven't, we've seen them use Daniel Thomas on third down sometimes, but we've also seen them use Miller. I mean, he dropped a crucial one a couple weeks ago, but he caught one last week. It didn't really go for very much, but so I just, it feels like the Dolphins are saying one thing and really doing another. It looks like Miller's on the field more in situations they said they wouldn't have him on the field. So I don't know.
Right. One thing is that it's tough to judge what a team's going to do in the regular season because they kind of set, this is your series, this is Daniel Thomas's series, They might not substitute as much as they might when it comes to the real stuff. So I always am weary of that kind of stuff where in a real game they might put in a different package. Last week's game was the starters went as far as they have. It was the realest thing we've seen so far, and I think we saw a lot more real Dolphins football than we've seen the first couple games. So it was interesting. I want to thank you, Alex, for joining us. You can follow Alex at Alex Miglio on Twitter. And Alex, tell them more about the Fantasy Gold package over there at Pro Football Fantasy.
There's Pro Football Focus, the website, and we have a fantasy section. We've been there for a few years now, and we have a gold package where you can subscribe. I believe it's for $26.99, or you can actually. We have a promotion with DraftStreet.com where you can sign up and deposit $20 and get a free subscription. But anyway, we have all sorts of good stuff, good fantasy tools like we have a mock draft simulator, and of course we have some really highly touted rankings from Mike Clay and some award-winning work there. So just if you go to profootballfocus.com/PFFfantasy, you'll see more. It's a good package.
Yeah, definitely. We've had Mike on the show a couple times now, and he's really pubbed that, and I was checking out what they offer, and it's interesting how much more you can get a leg up on your competition with that. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining the Dolphins Central podcast, and we look forward to following you on Twitter and getting some more. I'll be asking you a lot of questions about at about 12:30 p.m. on Sunday afternoons, if you don't mind.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna be running you were talking about the MMQB earlier. I'm actually running the fantasy chat alongside my partner Eric Edholm on Sunday mornings until 12:30. So if you want to get in a little bit before that, you can ask me then.
Football fans, check out the official T-shirt apparel shop for the Pro Football Central Radio Network. Check out BigFrog.com/Cincinnati. That's BigFrog.com/Cincinnati. You think it, we ink it. They have an awesome 24-hour turnaround time. You can also visit them at their fabulous store over at Anderson Town Center, 7426 Beachmont Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio 45255. That's BigFrog.com/Cincinnati.
And we're back, and our thanks once again to Alex Miglio for joining us on the program. Very good guest.
Yes, Alex is one of my favorite follows on Twitter when it comes to – he helped me a lot last year when it came to the playoffs, even though I lost miserably as usual. But it wasn't his fault. He's a great follow, and I plan on tapping into all my resources like him on Twitter and on his site, Pro Football Focus, this season.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely used him a lot for fantasy football advice as well. Also, it's great having him working for Bleacher Report as well. Everyone who covers the Dolphins for Bleacher Report, to tell you the truth, is pretty dang good.
I've said that before. It's solid over there for Dolphins coverage.
And I'm not just saying that to put myself over.
No, since the merger there and everything, it's really picked up. It's not a joke. It's for real. It's good stuff now. Another thing good about guys like Alex and our next guest, Steve Gallo, is that they're not like a Matthew Berry. You ask him a question, it speeds through his mentions. Guys like Alex, the up-and-comers, the guys that do just as hard work, they'll answer your question. They'll get back to you, and they'll spend the time like they care. A guy like Christopher Harris at ESPN, like I said, Matthew Berry, they don't care about your question. They probably go to Publix and get questions in line. They're sick of it. So it's always good to have a relationship and follow the guys that like Alex on Twitter. Again, Alex Miglio, Miglio. So follow him.
Yes, and speaking of relationships, we just played an ad for Big Frog of Cincinnati in Ohio, but there's a Big Frog here in Miami, as I'm sure you are aware of.
2 in South Florida, 1 in Plantation as well.
No, actually 3 in South Florida. 1 in Plantation.
Okay.
One further down south in Kendall, and then there's where we're going to be on Saturday, September 7th, which is the day of course, Canes versus Gators. And that is Big Frog Custom T-Shirts in Miami. It's located on 9892 Southwest 40th Street, otherwise known as Bird Road, if you're familiar with Dade County. Zip code 33165. And we are going to be there at 9 a.m. And we're going to be there from 9 a.m. till around 11:30. We're obviously going to leave before Canes versus Gators, and we're going to be performing a live podcast there.
Yeah, we're going to have some giveaways yet to be announced. We have some relationships with some fun products I've learned, as cigars and tequila and all that kind of fun stuff. This isn't your normal show. With it, PFC, they got the good sponsors. We're not hawking any office products here. We got the shirts like everybody else, but we're getting you drunk and smoking some cigars as well, because you got to get drunk to watch the Dolphins.
Definitely. And of course, what would be better than, coming by the show and then, maybe winning a little something that could help you get drunk before Gators versus Canes, which, well, now let's face it, everyone's going to drink for that.
Yeah, here's what you do. You come by, you win the raffle, you take the cigars and the tequila, and you sneak them into the sports bar we go to later on, and we all have a good time.
Oh, and there are plenty of places to go to, of course. Even right across the street from where we're located, there's a Flanagan's. So if that's where you are going, stop by Big Frog first and hang out with us and ask us some Dolphins-related questions, and we'll answer them live on our podcast. And also, you might wind up taking home some stuff.
Yeah, I've been talking about it on Twitter. We're getting all the details together as far as where we're going to meet afterwards, what we're going to do over there at the podcast. But you checked out the location today, I heard, and it was a real nice store, real nice place. I saw the pictures, and I'm looking forward to partnering with them. They've been real good to us. We got some T-shirts getting made, and it's getting bigger and bigger. The Dolphin season's coming. We're kind of like Tannehill last game. We're throwing darts now. No more messing around. So Dolphins podcast has definitely been named a starter. As corny as that sounds.
Yes, we've been named a starter, and we'll have our...
Yes. We beat out Daniel Thomas like everyone else.
Yes, like everyone predicted, too.
Right. We can you and me could probably carry the ball 7 times for 3 yards like he did. I mean, together. We can meet in the backfield and hold each other with the ball between us and run for 3 yards. Just fall forward, you know.
Yeah, we go forward. That's the thing. We don't,
You know,
and we look forward too when we run. So
right. Yeah, we might not look as good in the uniform though. We don't have the fro hawk either, so we wouldn't be. If Philbin wouldn't say we're playing as well as he looked great. He looked good. Right. I got you, Philbin. Apparently, we're giving points away for blocking now. So we'll have a couple fullbacks behind Tannehill, and won't worry about running the ball. But hopefully, this is all just talk. We're getting to the season. We know who the starter is now, and he's a former Hurricane with explosion. We can forget about the K-State guy. You know, let's get going here.
Hey, remember when they drafted him? And it's worth mentioning that the Dolphins traded up for him. How everyone was saying how he could run the Wildcat.
Oh, God, the Wildcat. People are still trying that. I see it every once in a while, and I'm like, it ain't gonna work. It worked. The Dolphins made that well dry, and it's over now. You know.
Yeah, George Bush was president the last time it worked.
Exactly.
That's all I gotta say about that. Anyways,
so
let's take a break.
We're gonna take a break. Yeah, we're gonna take a break here. We got Steve Gallo. We're gonna continue on our Dolphins Central fantasy dominated podcast here before we have Finn's Jesse later on. Really excited for that. So we'll take a break and come right back with Steve Gallo.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
This is Michael Jonathan.
This is David Nelson. This is Rob McClain.
This is Antonio Gray.
This is Antonio Brown.
Hi, this is Kyle Rudolph.
On the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
We're here.
And we're back. And now to introduce our next guest on the program. Just like Alex Miglio, he contributes to the Huddle. And you can also catch his stuff at USA Today. He is also a member of the Fantasy Writers Association and Pro Football Writers of America. Steve Gallo. Steve, thanks for joining us.
No problem. My pleasure to join the show.
Steve, this is mainly a fantasy-based show that we are doing today, which is why we have both you and Alex on the program. And one of the things I asked Alex was about who the Dolphins will look to in the red zone. Now, I'm going to get this question out of the way with you now. With Dustin Keller being out, who should the Dolphins go to in the red zone, and who do you think they will go to in the red zone?
Believe it or not, I think Lamar Miller is going to get a little more attention than what people are expecting. I know that some news has come out that the job's not his. Daniel Thomas is in the mix, but I'm not buying that 100%. We already know that Mike Wallace is more of a deep threat. And quite honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins struggled a little bit in the red zone with makeup of their team right now. So they're going to have somebody emerge. I don't think we know exactly who that player is at this point. Could be Brian Hartline. He makes a nice possession type guy in the red zone, but I think that they're going to try and lean on the running game more than likely.
Oh. Actually, earlier today, Philbin officially named Lamar Miller the starting running back.
There you go. I missed that.
It's all right. As for Lamar Miller himself, now that you know he has a starting job, what do you project him doing this season?
You know, in fantasy drafts, he was going as high as third round a few months ago. There's a lot of hype surrounding him. Then of late, with that news that Daniel Thomas was in the mix, I actually drafted him in the 5th round. It was actually I think 5.1 in a Fantasy Sports Writers Association draft. So his value had slipped some. I think he's a great value in round 3. Running back is thin by attrition year in and year out. But this year, if you don't get a solid 2 out of the first 2 rounds, I think you're going to be in trouble. And if you did happen to, hit wide receiver with one of those early picks, Miller's a guy that I think that you can rely on, because I don't think 1,300 yards and 8-10 touchdowns is out of the equation for him. I think he's going to be somebody that really helps to win a lot of championships for players that got him when they did, and he's going to surprise people this year, I believe. Him and David Wilson.
Hey, Steve, this is Ryan. When the draft started, a couple months ago, people do it a little early there. I guess a month ago, you could say. Mike Wallace, a lot of the experts were down on him. I guess they thought going from the Steelers to the Dolphins was a downgrade because Roethlisberger and Tannehill, obviously, you got a proven starter and a guy coming up. Now I see a lot of his draft position kind of creeping up, as it looks like he's kind of connecting with Tannehill, and Tannehill's looking for him a lot more, even though it is preseason. We'll see how it goes. But especially in like a PPR league where he might be looked at more by Tannehill, do you see him as someone that's rising or falling as far as compared to last season?
I think his value is going to be somewhat similar to last season. He's always going to have that big play proponent that really impacts his value fantasy-wise. With that, that's when you have to know the type of league you're in, the scoring system and such. If you're in a best ball league, he's a perfect type of guy because you don't have to worry about when you're going to plug him in. If you're in a league where, of course, you have to make those start and sit decisions, then it's a little more difficult because, him, Torrey Smith, those guys that rely on the long ball, you can get burnt with them. So if I'm going to go after a guy like Mike Wallace, I'd like to feasibly get him as my wide receiver 3 if at all possible. And I'd like to put a couple of possession-type receivers in front of him or behind him if possible. But I think he's going to have big games. I think he could rank, the top 12 to 15, 18 with the successful seasons. I think that Tannehill's making the right strides. But that doesn't mean he's going to be that solid producer week in and week out because I think there's going to be some big variance to his game because of the type of game that he has.
Right, maybe so. Bottom half, wide receiver 2, possibly 3, depending on how deep your league is and everything. Possibly around there then. Another question for you. A lot of people ignore the defenses. Of course, you don't take them till late in fantasy always, but what is your philosophy on defense? Not a lot of people talk about it. Are you you stream them? Like possibly like I ended up with the Patriots, and I was happy about that because I know who they're playing 6 times a season. Not exactly the Saints or the Patriots themselves or the Packers. They're playing the Bills or the quarterback situation, and the Jets everybody knows about. What's your philosophy on that? Would you rather reach for, say, the Seahawks this season or just pick somebody up and then every week you're dropping and picking somebody up?
The first thing I'm going to say, as much as I love the Seattle defense, the Niners defense, no, I'm not reaching for those guys early. There's just not enough variance from top to bottom. And then on top of that, year in and year out, the best defenses that we expect to be that way for fantasy, they just aren't. So really the risk-reward doesn't pay off if you take a defense late and it can wind up, finishing 12th or 13th in scoring, you're still close to, being a top 6 defense. When there's defenses like Arizona, the Dolphins, Cleveland, et cetera, that can be opportunistic and put up lots of points, I have no problem streaming. I'm not worrying about it. It doesn't matter if it's getting thin and I haven't gotten one and we're getting down the last 3 rounds of the draft. I'm still going to take them late, and I think you can succeed very well playing those matchups. Yeah, if you get a Patriots team that's going to face the Jets, a couple times, and the same with the Bills, that's always a plus. But again, I wouldn't reach for the Patriots just for those reasons.
Okay, cool. We were talking to Alex earlier, your coworker, I guess you could say there, and he wrote a preseason hype bust article there for Bleacher Report. Prior Whedon, he was going through guys like Stills for the Saints, just not only the Dolphins but for the entire NFL. On the other side of that, what is a guy that no one's talking about that maybe you could target that is out there on the waiver wire right now on your draft that right after the draft you should try to put in a claim for him?
Well, I don't know if he's going to fall into that mix where he's actually going to make it to the waiver wire, but if not, you get him very late. That's Andre Roberts in Arizona. Hauser's got an ankle issue now with a high ankle sprain, and in that offense, he's got upside of catching 75, 80 balls and could approach 1,050 yards with a handful of touchdowns. So he's a guy that I'm trying to target anywhere after round 17. As far as if you really want to knock out a sleeper that you know is going to be on the waiver wire, Alonzo Smith in Arizona is a running back that you might be able to pull off that has upside. Nothing's a given in Arizona. I'm not a big Mendenhall fan right now. He can't stay healthy. Arians does like to throw the ball more than run it, but he's a guy that you could possibly get off the waiver wire that might be able to pay off. But nobody's drafting right now.
Okay.
Now, Steve, I noticed on your Twitter not too long ago you were talking about Pierre Garçon. Why is it that you think he could have a really good year this year?
One, I mean, he was a very solid wide receiver back when he was playing with Peyton Manning, but Manning makes all of his wide receivers look great. Last year, him and RG3 had a pretty good chemistry going before Garcon hurt that foot and the other injuries that he wound up sustaining. He looks great in camp. I was up at Redskins camp for about 5 or 6 days this year, and doesn't look like there's any ill effects of any of his injuries. Of course, RG3 didn't work much in training camp, and I believe I was up there for one camp when he actually went live on 11-on-11 for the first time. But Garcon was just catching everything thrown his way, looks good in and out of breaks. I was watching him during team drills at one point where he was catching passes in the back of the end zone, one-handed from about 6 yards out. They were just throwing darts at him, and he was just catching. He caught about 7 or 8 of them just one-handed that were just amazing. I think that he's a guy that's being hugely overlooked, that could have a huge top 10, top 12 fantasy season from the wide receiver position. That's why I'm willing to go running back, maybe even running back early in drafts, because I'll go to war with guys like Garcon, Nix, Antonio Brown as my wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. And you can throw Mike Wallace into that mix too.
Oh. And finally, just looking at the Dolphins roster, are there any fantasy sleepers that have not really been talked about that you see on that team?
Well, first of all, I don't like the term sleeper anymore. I mean, we're in an age where no one's truly a sleeper. If somebody puts it out there electronically, everybody and their mother knows about it. So you got to look at things as of value. That's how I look at it anyway. Where does the value come? I'll tell you he's not a huge value, but I'm going to go on the other side of the ball and tell you Cameron Wake does not get near the accolades that guy should get from IDP players. They know that he ranks in the top 3, but he truly is one of the best IDP defensive ends in the game today. I think that there's going to be some value in your secondary. I don't think that while he's getting drafted early, I don't think Rashad Jones gets all the love that he can. I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish as a top 5 strong safety this year.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
All right, thanks to Steve Gallo for joining us. It was another great segment. Well, we've talked enough about fantasy, I think. Or then again, some people would say you can never talk enough about fantasy football.
Yeah, I've been staring at my team I drafted last night all day at work, on my phone, in the car at lights. I've just been like, you're in love with it. Everybody thinks their team can't lose when they draft it. And then the cold reality hits when the season starts, But as of right now, any information you can get. I've been listening to podcasts myself. Now's the time, before when the first games go by, people get hip to stuff. So this is when leagues are won. So any information you can get, especially about the Dolphins, is good to have.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about the Dolphins a bit more in depth as far as what we saw on the field. So, from the game on Saturday, what did you think of what you saw from Dolphins offense in those first couple of drives?
Right off the bat, those first couple drives, there was a little stall in there at the end, kind of like I just stuttered. There's a little stall at the end, but
very emblematic of what happened.
So I'm having a seizure, apparently a stroke. When they got down at the red zone, it's the same story. There's kind of the field shortened, and all of a sudden the other team doesn't have to cover Mike Wallace, deep routes and all that stuff. But, as far as driving down the field, it seemed like Tannehill was more sure of himself. He knew what he wanted to do. Last season he was thinking too much, and I think a lot of people have hit on that, where he's been thinking too much about his reads. And it seemed like Saturday night he was getting right to it. He knew exactly what he saw, like in a blink of an eye. There was nothing there, and he went to his next read. He was catching Gibson a lot, especially the first play of the game. He caught Gibson going across the middle of the field, kind of like Bess used to. Gibson dropped it. Gibson dropped the touchdown as well. So what were your thoughts as far as Gibson and the passing attack?
Well, I like what Gibson actually brings to the table, and I think that they are going to develop some chemistry there. As for Hartline, for some reason he's allergic to the end zone. It's almost as if someone filled it with cats. But He just caught, because he caught the ball up there and everything. I don't understand why either. I mean, I thought throughout the offseason that last year him only scoring one touchdown was a fluke, but now the more I look at it, I mean, there's just something about Hartline and the end zone. They just don't get along.
That's just not his thing. He's a tweener, if you ask me. He's not a Devon Bess that's going to go underneath through the middle. He's not a guy you can throw the fade, even though we should joke about it. They should throw him the fade. Why would you throw Brian Hartline a fade at the 1 or 2?
Well,
They did it.
It doesn't
They
help
did it
that
on
Ted Henry was
4th
the
down.
quarterback. Oh, God.
Yeah, I remember they did it on 4th down one time. The least, the lowest percentage play possible, they're throwing a fade on 4th down. I couldn't believe it. But the problem with him is that he specializes in those comeback routes at the sidelines. But when it gets to the end zone, nobody's worried you're going to blow past them. So there's not that cushion that he relies on. And the magician doesn't have he's a sure-handed receiver. The problem I have this season with him, and a lot of his projections are in the mid-40 catches. I thought that was low. But Gibson isn't best. Gibson is more athletic. He's taller. He's more of a threat. Maybe I'm not sure what to think about as far as sure-handed, but he is more of a threat. Then we have the deep threat in Wallace. Where is Hartline going to, mix in there? Maybe the loss of Keller gives him more opportunities, but it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, definitely. Now, as for the defense, holding a very powerful Tampa Bay offense to 64 total yards, that has to be – you have to consider that impressive, right?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have Doug Martin. It's really –
true, but –
yeah, I mean, powerful? I don't know. Are they really that powerful?
Well, with
it's
Doug
tough.
Martin –
Freeman looked like absolute crap. Maybe that's because we were that good, but it's so tough. Like,
right.
The Patriots lose 40-6 or whatever, and they stink. The week before, they score 37 points, and watch out, they're not going anywhere. Like, I try to concentrate on just when the starters were starters, but then you got like a Doug Martin not in there, so and a Revis not in there on defense. How does Revis affect how well we were driving down the field? I doubt Wallace would be open, So yeah, I just like to see the consistency that we had as far as guys were running the routes. I liked what the offense was doing until they got to the 20, and that's where they're going to miss Keller. They stalled some points, I think, because they had Daniel Thomas in the game instead of Miller. But there's a lot of question marks still. But I think we saw some good things. The problem I have with this team, biggest problem, is that there is so much lack of depth. If something happens to Keller, what do we got? If something happens to Jonathan Martin, what do we have at tackle? If something happens to an Ellerby, what do we have at linebacker? If something happens to a Grimes, what do we got at cornerback? Like, we're a nice layer on the top, but when you get underneath that, we're
very top
trouble.
heavy. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about it, a lot of these guys are guys they just signed. So what has Ireland done here? What has he done? I keep asking myself that. 3 tight ends he's drafted. What has he done? It's like the defensive line and nothing else.
Yeah.
I don't. He's had his time here. He's used the Parcells was the reason, not my picks thing for enough years now. Years. I mean, there's nothing here, and we still have guys like Trusnick and Spittler behind. There should be depth on this team. They've had enough picks, enough time.
They should. And by the way, 2011,
right.
That was Ireland's draft, where he decided to trade up to get Daniel Thomas. 2012,
right.
Ireland's draft, where he decides to pick Michael Agnew over T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton probably would have saved them some money because he would have been the Mike Wallace type deep threat. I'm not saying Hilton is better than Wallace, but he is cheaper. He would have been cheaper.
Honestly, I think in a couple of years you're going to see that there's not a crazy difference between those two, given the same opportunities. Wallace might be more physical, but when it comes to production, I don't think you're going to see a $60 million difference.
No.
I just don't. It's just lack of depth is my biggest issue. We're one injury away at a lot of places to having to go sign. Like Schenko just got released at tight end, and all of a sudden that looks good. That's not really a good look when you have drafted 3 tight ends.
And
There's
you're
3
still
tight
looking.
ends. How do you have 3 tight ends on a roster that you've drafted recently, and you're wondering who your tight end is? And because the guy you signed off a 1-year deal that was already coming off injury amazingly got hurt, you know? And I saw guys backing up Jonathan Martin I've never heard of. I used to be able to name every Dolphin. Now there's guys like Joe Adams, McDonald. It sounded like a kid's like story, McDonald and old McDonald, and then they got Adams, and oh my god, like I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And then you got Dallas Thomas over there stinking it up. What's your view on this last draft class? Because if you ask me, Ireland should be a little worried right now because so far a blocking tight end and a kicker are the only guys really contributing past. You got Davis, but you would be worried?
Davis, well, here's what worries me. First off, you have the number 1 pick in this draft that they took. The guy that they traded up for, he's not going to play the first week. Maybe he won't play the first week. And from what we've seen, he could be a beast, but there's a lot that he has to work on. And it looks like this year it's going to be feast or famine for him. He might get to the quarterback, he might cause a lot of turnovers, but on the flip side, he might get beat. And one player he is probably going to be very unfairly compared to, and I might be the first one to do this. And that is the player that reportedly the Dolphins were going to take had they not been able to trade down to the number 3 spot to take Jordan, is Tyler Eifert of the Cincinnati Bengals. And this was someone, by the way, that I actually said the Dolphins should have picked.
Yeah, I think Eifert, and they also were reported to have interest in Tavon Austin. Those are 2 guys that could end up being like, Austin is in the mold of a Harvin. Eifert's in the mold of a Gronk. These are impact players at positions that you didn't have much depth at. I'm not going to front. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't like we moved up and grabbed Deion Jordan.
No,
but guess what? I'm not a scout. I'm a fan. I'm not
too.
a scout. What the hell do I know? And you're a general manager. We have depth there. Do we have doctors? Our doctors are not exactly doing the best job this last decade.
Are they Are they the same doctors from 6 years ago that are like, that shoulder bruise, that's not, that's going to be a problem. Cole Tucker's just right.
I'm not sure about that. The thing is, I'm trying not to panic here.
I'm not here.
The overall picture should be patience with guys like him and Jamar Taylor and everybody else injury-wise. Why rush it right now? But if I were Ireland, this would not be my favorite look right now when it comes to patience. And I got people are talking about maybe they would cut Matt Moore. I'm like, that's one of the dumbest things I've heard come out of different, we'll say, radio hosts' mouths. They just don't know. They're not doing their research. We just gave him $4 million guaranteed for 2 years, and he hasn't taken a snap with the team. Why would we cut him?
Not just that, but also with Matt Moore, teams will be willing to trade for him if their quarterback goes down.
What about the 49ers if Kaepernick got hurt? They have like Colt McCoy, right? Isn't that their backup? I mean,
well, actually, and they're supposedly trying to trade him.
Yeah, they have. Who knows? But I mean, that's somebody you hold on to, and come that injury, just like Orton. When he was on the Bears, people are looking. We almost gave up a second or whatever for him.
Yeah.
People are looking. People fell in love with Pat Devlin. He's had his moments, but they fall in love with him after that Hard Knocks.
I'm sorry, I don't see it. I really don't.
Candy Crush. No, come on. He's Pat Devlin. I mean, he's had his chances. He's had hundreds of practices. Sure, he's great to have, but I think on this roster, we should let him go and pick up another lineman, pick up another cornerback, a guy that, we need to create depth. People are breaking loose already.
Yeah,
we need to pick up.
Yeah, we need to create depth at those positions for this season. And as far as finding that third backup quarterback, we can do that next year. Next year is going to be a pretty good class for quarterbacks. Pick up your third quarterback next year.
I'm so confused at what the philosophy is here. Ireland's on a 1-year deal, but it seems to me his moves make it seem to me that he's pretty comfortable, which is troubling.
It's troubling because I don't think he should be here if the Dolphins aren't going to the playoffs. So
no, I think the record will decide his fate. Otherwise, no matter what Ross says, he'd already upped his contract. I hope they wait.
Yeah.
I hope they don't go, oh, we're 5-4, pretty good. Let's give Ireland 2 years. Yeah,
that's my nightmare. The 6-2 start, which by the way, 6-2 start, I will be ecstatic, and then the contract extension. If that happens, if they start 6-2 and then sign Ireland for an extension, I'm willing to bet. Okay, yeah, we're finishing the year 2-6, aren't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're gonna cancel the shows for the rest of the season and drink all the Bonita tequila that we were gonna give away.
Yeah.
But right now I'm trying to be a veteran fan here and not panic, and not just panic. That's not the right word. Jump to conclusions based upon we've had 4 preseason games now. I can't believe we have another one. But let's just wait. But I think we're all smart enough to see the depth of this team, and that's frightening because it's already happened in one spot. We've already had the Keller injury. What's going to happen when Daniel Thomas turns an ankle? What's happening? We're going to shuffle the line. We got a guy like Claybo. He's not exactly, he's been hurt before. That's why he's available.
He's not a spring chicken.
Right.
Even Atlanta was okay to
exactly.
let him go.
Yep. So, God forbid Pouncey got hurt. The depth on this team is just troubling. There's a lot they can do when it comes to places like linebacker. They can shuffle around. If Jordan's not injured, they can bring him in. But places like cornerback, offensive line, tight end, as you've already seen, I'm worried. So hopefully they can stay healthy. That'll be a big.
I'll add to that wide receiver, which is where I'm going to make a suggestion that the Bills released Derek Rogers earlier today.
Yeah.
Not a suggested troubled kid. I know there's some character issues there.
Yeah.
But if I'm the Dolphins, I look at what I have as my 4th receiver. With
right, and he's still practice squad eligible, I believe. So guys like that, you can pick them up. But again, if I'm Ireland, I'm not looking. I'm looking for guys that can contribute now. I was talking today on Twitter about Brandon Lloyd. I wonder what his problem is. I know he's troubled himself, but I noticed that he had against the 49ers last year, 15th week, he had 190 yards and 10 catches for the Patriots. Now that, to me, that would be some. He had a crappy game against the Dolphins later on, though, like 1 catch. Is that what you're going to say? Yeah, I saw that too. But he's somebody that I'd say we could. We're talking about a Bumpus. Wouldn't you rather have a Lloyd? I kind of would. But
definitely.
Yeah, if you're win now mode, that's the kind of moves I'd be making. But it doesn't seem like they are. It seems like there's a 3-year plan in place with the GM with a 1-year contract. It's all kind of weird to me. Maybe we'll get some answers. Who knows?
Yeah, hopefully we will.
Yeah. So we have a guest coming up in Finn's Jesse that I am a huge fan of. He got his big break. He was doing the CBS games here, the preseason games. He's got his own show there, the Finsiders, and I'm just a big fan of his. He's a great guy on Twitter, and he's down to earth. Can't wait to have him on.
As am I, and also one of the most appreciative guys. I put him on every Follow Friday, and he's always saying, "Thanks, man, much appreciated." So
yeah, he started from the bottom, and he's definitely a guy that you want to follow and keep in touch with on Twitter because he's in the know and he's not scared to converse with you. So he's a good guy. I can't wait to talk to him.
Yeah, me neither.
All right, so stay tuned. We're going to take a break. Come back with Finn's Jesse.
This is Michael Johnson.
This is David Nelson. This is Rob McClain.
This is Antonio Gray.
This is Antonio Brown.
Hi, this is Kyle Rudolph.
On the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
We're here.
And our next guest on the program has been the great play-by-play announcer for CBS 4's coverage of the Miami Dolphins this season. He also, of course, hosts his own show, The Finsiders, which can be heard at MiamiDolphins.com and can also be heard on 940 The Sports Animal. Please welcome Jesse Agler.
Gentlemen, it is a pleasure.
It's great to have you on the program, Jesse. Now, in the 3 preseason games that you have done the play-by-play on, and again, excellent job. What have you seen from the Dolphins that would encourage you going into the season?
Ooh, what has encouraged me? I think Ryan Tannehill. I like the way he looks. You know, Mike Wallace got off to a little bit of a slow start. We didn't see anything in the first couple games. Then he had the 3 catches and the touchdown against Houston. He had 3 more catches the other night against Tampa Bay. The Gibson drops were frustrating the other night, but then he came back with a touchdown. You know, I really think that if this team does go somewhere this year, it's going to be on Ryan Tannehill. It's going to be on the wide receivers. And so it's nice seeing him get on the same page with those 2 guys. You know, Hartline's going to be there, man. He's just such a pro. He's so solid. I think back to Saturday night, the first down reception he had right at the first down marker. How many times in the last couple of years have we seen a Dolphins receiver run that route on 3rd and 8 and go 7 yards, turn around and make the catch? You know, so it's nice to see Hartline do it right at the sticks, pick up the first down. And, you know, the running back situation is weird to me. I just feel like the way fans are looking at it, and even a lot of the media is looking at it, is way different than the reality that I've seen. I think this is Lamar Miller's job. I think it's not even close. And I think Lamar Miller's looked good. I mean, he hasn't gotten a ton of opportunities in the preseason, but, man, every time he gets even a little bit of space, it seems like it's like a 10, 12, 15-yard run. And I'm definitely encouraged by what I've seen out of Lamar.
I have been too now. Well, what about on defense? What has encouraged you from what you've seen?
Oh, man, they're good. They're going to be really good on defense. You know, and they have been good. To the credit of the guys that have been around for a couple of years, they've been solid. You know, they haven't been game changers. They haven't been game breakers, but they've been solid on defense. And I'm really impressed with Ellerbe. I'm really, really impressed with Ellerbe. He just seems to fly around and always be where he's supposed to be. I'm excited about Rashad Jones taking another step forward. I think Brent Grimes is probably as good a cover corner as we've had here in the last, 6, 7, 8 years. So that should help. You know, the young corners, Taylor and Davis, I like them. I don't know if I like them at this moment for right now, but I do like them for the big picture. But no, I think the defense has a chance to be special. The defensive line is maybe the best in the NFL, certainly in the top 3. I think, when you start looking around. And, Cam Wake is as good a pass rusher as there is. They've got great depth at all of those positions. And all of that is the reason why I'm not that concerned about Deion Jordan not being out there yet, because they've got so many other really quality bodies on the defensive line. And, if they can create turnovers the way they're talking about creating turnovers and the way they've created turnovers in the preseason, then they're going to be really, really special on defense. And, you look at the front of the schedule for the Dolphins, and those first 5 games are so brutal, and they are. And you say, man, they're really going to have to score a lot. Are Wallace and Tannehill going to be on the same page enough for the Dolphins to be able to score with those teams early on? Well, the nice thing is that, who knows, maybe you get to steal one of those tough games because the defense does something, to allow you to win it. When maybe they put up a score of their own, maybe they set up the offense, in an easy scoring situation. I think that's the kind of defense we're talking about, a defense that can really help them, maybe steal a game or two that the last couple of years they wouldn't have been able to win.
Hey, Jesse, this is Ryan. How you doing today?
Excellent, man. Good to talk to you, not on Twitter.
Yeah, man. Finally, you can hear my voice. I've heard yours plenty of times. You've been doing a great job on TV, man. It's been a nice change there, a little youth to the booth, if you will. But can you give our listeners an update on Deion Jordan? You mentioned him earlier. What's his status looking like for the first couple weeks? I wouldn't expect him myself for the first week, but what have you heard about his rehab progressing?
Not hearing anything. And, I've learned a couple of things covering an NFL team day in, day out the last, 3-4 seasons. One is if they don't have to give you injury information, they're not going to give you injury information, and they don't have to right now. They don't owe us an injury report, one of those, this guy was limited, this guy was full. They don't have to do one of those until the Wednesday before the Browns game. So I don't know. We'll see. We have no information. All we have to go on is what we can see. And the other thing that I've learned about injuries covering this team the last couple of years is, may sound obvious, but what you see in practice tells you what you're going to see in a game. And, I mean, if you see a guy kind of off to the side early in the week, but he's there, well, maybe he's got a chance to play on Sunday. And then if he's out there on Thursday, you're like, okay, this guy's got a chance to play. If you don't see a guy at practice, he's not going to play that week. And, Deion Jordan isn't going to play this week against the Saints. Not that that's any kind of surprise, but he hasn't been there practicing. It's a rehab situation. He had the surgery in the off season. It's a shoulder. That's pretty much the extent of what we know. And everybody's body is different, and the amount of time it takes to come back from something differs guy to guy, situation to situation. No surgery is exactly the same as the other. And obviously earlier in the preseason, they thought he was ready to go, and he took a step back. We don't really know anything more than that. But whether he's ready or not for Cleveland and Indianapolis, we're going to have to see. Does he practice that week? Is he out there limited? And if so, then he's got a chance to play in that game. And if he's not, then no. If you just had to go gut feeling right now, are we going to see him week 1? Probably not. But I didn't think we'd see him in pads the first day they were in pads, and there he was. So, it's really a tough thing to handicap until we get to that game week.
Right, yeah, it seems like there's been a lot of talk on Twitter and social media, the radio today, about that maybe he was rushed back due to, the fans and the media wanting to play with their new toy, air quotes. Do you feel like he was, at the time when they threw him in there, that he was ready to go, or was that just something that it's just an injury that's one of those kind of injuries in the shoulder where it's such a vital part of the pass rush that it might pop up from time to time?
I think that's what it is. I mean, I heard people saying that today, and who knows? Maybe that's part of it. But if I'm a team doctor, a team trainer, and I'm a medical professional, am I really worried about what Omar or Jesse or Armando is saying when I'm making a decision about that? You can't.
Not at all.
You just can't. It's not realistic to me. And so, I think they put him back out there because, okay, he passed whatever series of tests they gave him, physical tests, and hey, he's able to do this with the shoulder. Oh, the range of motion. Oh, he can pick up this much weight. Whatever the test is, I don't know. But I think he passed that test, and it was like, okay, great, let's go out there. And remind everybody, he wasn't just out there for one day and then he was out again. Like, he practiced for a few days, he played in the game, and then he was out again. So, I think it's just something that pops back up, and they're like, all right, back to the drawing board. But I just can't imagine, if you're a doctor or a trainer, that you're at all worried about that kind of stuff. And I also can't imagine, Jeff Ireland or Joe Philbin getting one of those medical guys on the phone and being like, hey, they're killing me on Twitter. We got to get him back out there. That just doesn't sound realistic at all. When you say it out loud, you hear how absurd it sounds. So I don't really buy that whole thing.
And also,
I think a lot of people. Go ahead, Thomas.
No, what I was gonna say is, I highly doubt Joe Philbin even checks Twitter, where probably doesn't even know what it is. He doesn't seem like he's too interested in that.
I tell you what, every NFL coach knows exactly what Twitter is, and they know exactly what's being said by their players on Twitter. Now, whether he actually gets on there and uses it or not, probably not. He doesn't have time for that. But I guarantee you, Joe Philbin and every other head coach, even the oldest, crustiest head coach in the National Football League, knows enough about Twitter that he knows his players are on it and that he may someday have to respond to something one of them writes on it. They just have to know. I mean, that's just the nature of the program.
Good point.
We did find out that Pat Riley for the Heat has actually been monitoring it through like a nondescript, like 2620 PR. We found out that he's been, they're watching. They might be, an egg photo, but they're on there, and if they're not, they're using the team's Twitter to possibly, check up on it. But last question for me, getting back to Deion Jordan, I think the biggest question a lot of fans are going to have, and it's an overall question with this team, so many new parts. Do you see him being able to jump back in and get with the rest of the team and get on the same page? Or it might be with the entire team. I feel like it could be with the first part of the schedule being so tough. Is there going to be a portion of the season where they need to gel, and maybe it's not a good combination, the hardest part of the schedule and the getting to know each other part of the schedule with the new team? How do you feel about all that?
Yeah, I think you bring up a valid point, the tough part of the schedule and the getting to know each other part of the schedule. And I think that, could have an impact when it comes to receivers and tight ends and Tannehill, maybe even in the secondary, although I feel like those guys are really on the same page. One place I'm not worried about it, though, is the defensive line. I mean, Kevin Coyle or any defensive coach would hate to hear me say this, but it's pretty much go get the quarterback. When you're playing defensive end, and especially if you're being used, primarily at least at first as a pass rusher, he doesn't have to develop any chemistry with Jared Hodrick next to him, I don't think. Certainly not the way a right guard has to with a right tackle or the way a quarterback and a wide receiver have to get. They're going to say, Deion, go in the game, tackle Brady. And I think that he's going to be able to run out there and hopefully do that. So with him in specific, I'm not all that concerned about that kind of thing. I think once he's healthy, once he's able to go out there, they'll ramp him up. They're not going to throw the whole playbook at him and be like, okay, you're now in every play. They're going to ease him in. And I think that's what's best for him, especially with the amount of time he's missed based on the NCAA rule or the NFL rule about having to finish at Oregon and then, based on the injury stuff. But, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that that kind of thing could be difficult for the team just because, the schedule is nasty right off the bat. And so when you're talking about the passing game or some of the blocking up front, yeah, that could be impacted. There's no doubt.
Oh, Ryan, Jesse, of course, that actually goes perfectly to my next question, my last question for you, Jesse, which is about the Dolphins' offensive line, and that is how much improvement have you seen in that unit, that much maligned unit, from the first week of training camp through that first game against Dallas up until now, and do you see them improving any more before the start of the season?
I think, they're improving every day. So do I think they'll get better between now and the start of the season? Yeah, assuming everybody stays healthy. I'll say this. That first preseason game, everybody was freaking out about Jonathan Martin, right? Everybody on Twitter, I imagine, a lot of the podcasts and the blogs and the fan sites and the message boards, there's a lot of chatter about Jonathan Martin after that Dallas game. I haven't heard anybody bring up Jonathan Martin's name in like 3 weeks. That's a very good thing. Yes, yeah. That's a great thing. So he's gotten better. The big question mark right now is right guard. And if I would have told you over the summer, I'd be like, hey, everything's going to be Jake Long leaves, right? Now, if I said over the summer, hey, everything's going to be cool on the offensive line, might be some question marks at right guard going into the final preseason game. You'd be like, all right, cool. You'd sign up for that, I think. When you consider all the different positions. And now that said, John Jerry, he played more snaps than any offensive player last year for the Miami Dolphins. And people kind of pick on John Jerry. He's had the weight issues, but he seems to kind of have that, more under control now than at any point in his career. And maybe he's just one of those guys that takes a couple of years for the lights to come on. We'll see. But it was nice to see him back out on the field against Tampa Bay because, John Jerry, I imagine, is going to go into this thing as the starter. So got to get him some reps, got to get him some time next to a new guy, Tyson Clabo at right tackle. And how nice has Clabo been? I mean, you bring him in as a free agent. He's a veteran guy, and you just don't even have to talk about him. He's just there. He's solid. He does his thing. He'll get beat, I'm sure, this year. They all do. But, he's just a good, solid player and somebody we don't ever have to discuss. And I like offensive linemen you don't have to discuss. It is there. They're doing their job, and it allows you to talk about the quarterback and the running backs and the wide receivers.
Very good, Ben. Yes, the right guard. We've been having issues with that for years anyways with the Dolphins. So, really.
I mean, 32 teams in the NFL right now. How many of them you think are like, man, we love all 5 of our offensive linemen?
Exactly. Exactly. Every team has issues. And I don't see the Dolphins being any different from any other NFL team in that aspect as far as having their issues, but they also have their strengths. Jesse, thanks so much for joining us. Really great to have you on the show, and we would love to have you back whenever you would like to come back.
Yeah,
well,
thank
my
you so
pleasure.
much, Jesse.
I like you guys a lot. Yeah,
I just want to say,
absolutely.
Jesse, after it seems like you're one of the guys the people get behind, and I really appreciate you conversing with everyone on Twitter and being such a down-to-earth good guy. We all know your story. I was reading about you not too long ago, starting from the bottom as an intern there, and it's really, we really appreciate you coming on and being so cool with everybody.
No, that's really nice, and I appreciate that. But I mean, you guys are the ones that make people like me exist. I mean, without fans that are really into it and cool and care about it and are passionate about it, even in the down times, none of this stuff can happen. But yeah, man, I love the Twitter thing. I love the fan thing. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but you guys crack me up, and I love it. I mean, it's like talking to my friends about the team. Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly the conversations I have with my friends, except now you get to do it with a bunch of strangers, and most of them are pretty normal people.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime, guys.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
That was Jesse Agler joining us last from the Finsiders and MiamiDolphins.com. And once again, a great show. And he's part of the reason why.
Yeah, he's a real knowledgeable guy. He's down to earth, so we like him. We like him. He's one of the good ones.
Yes, he is, and yeah, we're definitely going to try to get him back.
Yeah,
definitely. And also, our thanks to our previous two guests, Alex Miglio, for the first one for joining us.
Yes, we have had a fantasy-dominated show.
Fantasy-dominated show. Him
Mr.
and Steve Gallo.
Yes, we did. I think we got a little different perspective from both. It's good to have differing opinions as well. We're finishing up the drafts and the preseason, getting all the chores out of the way, all the the training camp and kind of all the prerequisite stuff, and now we can get to the real stuff. Kind of like we did there at the end of the show. We got to Jesse and started talking about, I think sometimes fantasy impacts reality. Tannehill might not be a top 20 fantasy QB, but there's no reason he can't lead someone to a Super Bowl.
He can still go 10-6.
Right. Yeah, I mean, get in the playoffs. Eli Manning got in the playoffs a couple times. Look what happened, His name might be Eli Manning, but what if it was Tannehill? It's football is one of those sports where even more now so than before, you just get into the dance and you got a chance. It's not best of 7. It's not the Miami Heat playing the Bobcats or the 76ers who jump in the playoffs as the 8th seed and they have no chance. You just got to get in there and things happen. The wild card is won.
One game.
Yes. It's a game of inches.
Yeah.
Inches. We'll go with the cliches, but yeah, man. I mean, like I said, I think we can get past all the fantasy stuff. That's good and dandy. I mean, I love fantasy more than anybody, and I love having Alex and Gallo on. But I love talking about the real thing coming up. We got one more game to get out of the way. So, is there anything we can learn from this final game against the Saints? It's rumored that possibly we're not going to get much of the starters. Are you looking for a certain guy on the bubble that you want to see if he can make the team? Possibly a Bumpus? I'm kind of looking at him. I think he may have made it already, but he could screw it up. That's possible, right?
Yeah, no, someone like Bumpus can definitely screw it up. Also, someone like Gillisley who really needs to save himself.
Yeah. Did you see what I was on Twitter? I was just saying he seems like just a guy. I don't see him as – he doesn't do anything – well, I was kind of – I don't know. It's tough to know if you're biased because it's like a Gator. We got a Gator running back, or kind of like Lamar Miller. If he went to Utah, would we be this excited about him? But he's a Cane.
Good question.
He's a Cane. So Gillisley, I was excited about him. Granted, I didn't know a lot. I knew he was kind of one of those kind of running backs in college that kind of waited his time and got an opportunity. And he was solid, nothing special. We could use a guy like that, but I don't think he's shown enough. I wouldn't cut him. I think he's a guy we got to keep, even if it means, taking off one of those backup like I could do. I've heard he's kind of on the bubble.
He's on the bubble, and A.J. Francis also on the bubble. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to see pretty much every backup defensive lineman that will be playing simply because that position is just so deep. It's the only Dolphins position that we can say is deep. That there's going to be
deep overall. I mean, that's a position that you can sometimes go off the street and get a guy in an emergency and just rush the passer.
And even then, the Dolphins just signed someone to play defensive end. I don't even exactly remember the guy's name, but I know that they just signed someone to play defensive end. So, the position wasn't deep enough as it is. But, the likes of A.J. Francis, I would say Derek Shelby, but it looks like he's made the team. He's had quite a few good performances this preseason.
Yeah.
But really, other than the bubble guys, there's not really much else to gather from this game. Just,
it'll be interesting to see if Agnew makes the cut. I think if he wasn't a draft pick, he'd already be gone. Even with the Keller injury, I think it's one of those things where you might make the team, but that doesn't mean you made the team. That doesn't mean you're going to be on week 1 roster. You could make the team and then get cut when the final cuts for the other teams come through, especially tight end position. I think one of those guys is in big trouble. So, Yep,
Yeah,
and another guy I've had my eye on is Lee Robinson, that the linebacker from the CFL. I thought he's been real solid, you know?
Yeah, so it's also to your point about cuts from other teams.
Mm-hmm.
Keep an eye on the Saints. A player that you might see playing for the Saints this week, he could wind up a Dolphin the next week. That's how it usually works with that final preseason game. Usually the fourth for the Saints.
Right,
Good
an
for us.
audition there, an in-person audition, kind of like, and Ireland likes that because he went to the UF Pro Day and came home with like 7 players, so he likes auditions in person, But yeah, I mean, we were just talking about the depth. I feel like there's 10 spots in this roster where you wouldn't be that upset if they're interchangeable, and I feel like that maybe is too much, and maybe the 10 above that are guys that we've heard of, and you kind of overvalue it because it's yours, but something else might shake free, and it's way more valuable. You never want to get burned like a Marlon Moore is over there in San Francisco, and they're starting him right now while Manningham and Austin Collie are getting, I guess, healthy.
That's the only reason I think they're starting him, by the way. I mean, other people are using that as an excuse to attack the Dolphins, like, oh, there's another one. He was horrible with that, but really, you got to look at the perspective. The 49ers, when it comes to the wide receiver, after Crabtree, they've never really been that deep anyways. And not having Crabtree, and not having Manningham, there's, I don't, if
Lucky
Harbaugh,
for them.
Yeah, if
Lucky
Harbaugh
for them, they
really
were
had
able to
his
pick up
choice.
Bolden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Harbaugh really had his choice, I don't think he'd be having Marlon Moore as a starter. But then again, you never know. He could explode there, and Colin Kaepernick can create a miracle or something.
Right. You know what we're speaking of the Saints. I was just noticing that they have a couple extra wide receivers possibly. Just like every other team, there's going to be wide receivers that are shake free. And a guy like Bumpus could be in trouble. You never know. Dante Stallworth was cut today, I believe it was. There's going to be names. Tommy Streeter from the Canes. Everybody wants him, but what has he done in the NFL? Nothing. There's going to be lots of different kinds of options, so it's going to be interesting. I just think that a guy like Agnew might make the team, but he might not be there next week. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, a lot to see. Definitely an interesting game to watch, and after that game next week, that's when we're really going to prepare, and we're going to have 2 podcasts in the span of 1 week. One of them being our normal Monday night podcast, the other being our live Saturday podcast from Big Frog and on Bird Road. So definitely an exciting week for us next week, and well, I can guarantee this: we are going to bring it when it comes to our shows, and we're going to have more great shows like the ones we put on throughout the preseason, and like the one we had today with more great guests.
Yep. Well, it was a good show. I think we got a lot of information this week. Usually you and me kind of dart around. I think this week we got some good information from some quality guys. Yeah. We kind of sit here and throw it back and forth like we just did. But the people actually got to hear some guys that are a lot smarter than me talk. So that was good. And I feel like I'm ready for my fantasy waivers now with a couple of those sleepers or value guys, as I like to call them. And I feel a little bit better about Deion Jordan now after talking to Finn's Jesse. I got to call him by his name. I'm so used to seeing him on Twitter. His name is Jesse Agler, ladies and gentlemen. I keep calling him Finn's Jesse. That's not his birth name. But yeah,
no,
go ahead.
But I don't think he would mind if you called him that if you saw him in public either.
Hey, Finn's Jesse at Publix. Right.
Yeah.
Very good, Thomas. Very good. We look forward to getting this terrible preseason out of my life.
Yes.
Oh God, one week, everybody is, the Patriots are Super Bowl champions, and next week they stink. Same with the Dolphins. 1 week there's a running back controversy. The next week there's not. I'm just ready. Tannehill looked good last week. I think next week we're not going to see a whole lot of anything. But let's start talking about the Browns.
That's what we're going to be doing next week. We'll be previewing that game. We'll be previewing the season. Next week, I'm not sure whether to do this on Monday or for the live podcast, but next week I will have my prediction for what the Dolphins are going to do this season.
Oh, very good.
I haven't decided when I'm going to spring it on everybody, but I will be springing it on everybody at some point.
Well, I'm sure you'll mention that on Twitter. Where can the ladies and gentlemen follow you on Twitter?
Of course, follow me on Twitter at Thomas Galicia. Also, be sure to read my work at Bleacher Report. This week, on Friday, I'm going to have a rundown of what the experts are predicting the Dolphins are going to do, and I'm going to analyze it myself, but I'm not going to give away my prediction because I'm saving that for this show. Also, whenever there's something that I feel the need to write about, I'm going to write about it this week. I don't have anything assigned until Friday, but I always find something to write about anyway, so I will definitely get to that. Other than that, of course, follow our Twitter at Dolphins Central. We will have more information about our big event on September the 7th, as well as more information on our shows and, of course, links to all of the episodes. And Ryan, where can we find you?
You can find me at Riz Wrights. Pretty inappropriate, so if any kids are listening, probably want to ask your parents first. But the good news is you can follow me in the Miami New Times as well. As the heat season starts coming back around the corner, I'll be doing that as well again, and talking about everything from the news to debauchery to, whatever happens to be in the news. This week I got a pretty fun Miami Hurricanes list. I won't reveal what it is. You'll have to see. But you can catch me over there, and it's been a great show. Thank you for joining us on Dolphins Central.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.